What are we going to talk about today? All right, college football. Hey.
I think that's a route. You might know a thing or two.
I think so.
So I think I'd like to talk about the changing dynamics of college football.
Okay.
Not to date ourselves, but we graduated from college in the latter part of the 99 or the 90s, in 98, 99, that era. And just we've seen a lot of change in college football since then. You know, you can go, the big revolutionary change that started it was going to the BCS.
Right.
And then from there, obviously, now we're in the midst of the college football playoff. So there's just several topics out there, I think, that lend to the fact that college football is probably not going to look like what it looks like right now in 20 more years.
No, I would. Dude.
So the question becomes,
is that good?
And what does it look like? So I think I would think the most pressing thing, I was pulling up some quick stats and just to get an idea. In 2016 and 2017, the NCAA as an organization pulled it over $1 billion in revenue. I looked up the teams individually. It looks like most of them are running slightly over profitability versus their revenue versus their expenses, according to what they're reporting. Some slightly under. Some are allocating, which I have to know a little bit more about where the allocation comes from. But because it's so close on all these, it lends me to believe that from a tax perspective and the fact that, state universities were living under nonprofit concepts, there's got to be something to that why everybody is not running at profitability, because Lord knows just so we're aware, it's NCAA finances. So when you think about it, yeah, football is running you a massive profit in a lot of these universities, but then you've got Title IX, you've got your non-revenue generating sports, and that's where a lot of your cost is coming in too to weigh it out. But I think they have to do that, and that may even be part of Title IX. So, again, I think that's going to be the interesting thing. I wanted to understand the finances of what it is right now to give us a little bit of background.
Sure. Well, those smaller sports at these schools also don't garner as much money as football does. Right. As much, in terms of what they put in. Now, granted, it's like a business scenario. You get out what you put into it. The more money you put into it, probably the more return you're going to get on your investment.
Sure.
But at the end of the day, it's a slippery slope. Because you got to pay them the same. The arguments have gone from paying everybody the same to not paying, to can you, oh God, how complicated would that be? Kind of pay, based on production, on what each sport, on the revenue each one brings in, right, individually. Can you pay out from there? And say, okay, well, based on that, this is the percent. If you do it based on just a percentage instead of an amount, then that's the way that can get done.
Yep. I guess I could be wrong, but I feel like kind of, and for us to give back a little bit of history, what were some of, in the last 20 years, some of the major topic shifts? I think, I briefly touched on the BCS, the idea of getting the national championship right, we'll call it that, which really kind of flows into the playoff too as well. It's an offshoot of that because the BCS clearly had a lot of imperfections in it, and that's what evolved to that. But what else have you seen change the sport?
ESPN Game Day.
Okay, how so?
It's media. You think about it, even back when we were in school, like Game Day was still a thing, but like since then, now it's not a thing. Now it is an event of epic proportions when they announce, that you want, if you're a college football fan, you want, and you see, you have a great matchup here, you're like, man, hopefully we'll get Game Day.
Yeah.
Even I think we touched on in previous conversations, the smaller schools, those North Dakota states, or the what was it, like Liberty and some kind of like old rivalry up in like the Mid-Atlantic. Going to Army Navy, things like that. It's become more than a show. It's a culture. We talk about the culture of college football. Game Day is a part of that. Waking up that first Saturday, and let me preface all this. I got to be honest, because the Four Letter Network, outside of what they do for college football, is, and I'm a ESPN, guy for a long time, but like, the past few years, it's poor. It's poor.
Yeah.
It's just not the same. Thus, the birth of an NFL network, and then you find yourself spending all your time on something like that. I digress. I say that to say I think that. I think they might have, they've taken the game day program and they've done great things in building it up from where it was, and from an entertainment value, from bringing things to the community, the schools, the fans. But where we sit today with that show, it's almost become too much. You follow what I'm saying?
Yep.
It's a little too much. Like, they're just doing so many things, and a lot of it is, some of it deviates away from football. I get it. You want to bring the special guest, entertainer, this, that, and the other. It's cool. Hey, they went to my school. Yeah, they're famous. We're talking college football here, okay? Yeah. And it's just kind of an, I worked in radio advertising for 10 plus years. So, the media creates what we view, and whatever they want us to view, they create.
Sure.
So I think that's a big part of the changes, because with the game day has become more notoriety for each school, each program, specific players.
Yep.
They'll do the little like one-off pieces with the players themselves, and
right.
There's not many other places that a fan, or particularly of that team or that player, can maybe access that type of information. So you start to, as a fan, it becomes more than, again, just a show. You become, if they've got Trevor on there and I'm a Clemson fan, or they're talking to Dabo, there's become a connection.
Sure.
Now, okay? So I think that has a lot to do with it. I think the trickle down from that, because like then you start, the value that college football brings to these universities is on display every Saturday morning.
Yep. On
game day. You see all those people built by the Home Depot, all these big companies involved with it. Okay? Oh boy. Here come, and then you may not be talking about, unfortunately, the right guard, but you're talking about T. Higgins and Justin Ross, or you're not talking about Alabama, they do talk about everybody on their defense, but you're not talking about the D tackle at Florida State. You're talking about Cam Akers, right? Yep. So then that's where, here we go. This guy's more valuable because he eyeballs. People want to see him. He's exciting. Mm-hmm. So then there's another debate. I flip that back to you now. So then how is if you went on a percentage basis, and then all of a sudden they were able to put names on jerseys. Well, Trevor's jersey is off the hook. Well, Trevor might not be back there doing his thing if it weren't for, the mammoth left tackle that's keeping his ass clean. Right? But offensive line ain't sexy.
Yeah, but if you think about it, though, it is, it's just like, when it comes to paying, you're going to be talking the same concepts as the NFL. What value does that specific individual at that specific bring there? And you're going to have the imbalance just like you have in the NFL. But kind of going back to the way the game's changed, that's off the field, and that is a huge culture shift. On the field, if you think about it, we've seen the birth of instant replay in college football. We've seen
an enormity of rule changes.
Yes, and the effect of the concussions and all of those things has been a major play in the rule changes. To now, which is kind of where it gets me to pay, the pay part of it, because I believe this is the next step, is the craziness of I can't even follow the transfer rule anymore. It used to be pretty cut and dry. You moved somewhere else, you sat a year. You went to a different, like a division level, you could play right away. But you had to go, could you go one double A? You go one double A, right? You go one double A, JUCO, you can go.
No.
Can you not go one double A?
I don't think so.
All right, I apologize. That's the
I think you can go JUCO.
Yeah, that's the FCS.
Yes.
I'm using. You can tell how old I am now by saying one double A.
I don't think you can go FCS. I think you can. JUCO is the highest level you can go
without a waiver.
Or you sit. Yeah.
Without a waiver.
Right.
But now it's like they're giving out waivers like lollipops. So. And I don't understand it because there are still some people that are not getting them. And so I guess what I feel like that is the birth of And if you think about this, it's the birth to me of free agency in college football.
That's what they call. That's what a lot of media personalities and sports talk hosts. That's kind of what they're saying.
So if you got free agency now, how do you
I don't,
draw?
I don't really know how to feel. I mean, it's so. I mean, we had Kelly leave, but for a good reason, and it's like, I feel like I understand the process if it's a grad student, because the guy graduated college, and that is more so from a reward standpoint, because one of the things we've discussed, and might come up, culture of coaching culture. We had that last conversation.
Yep.
I mean, one of the cultures that we have is graduating our kids. You should be you're building men
Right.
first. Okay, so if somebody graduates with a degree and then as a grad student wants to transfer, I mean, almost in my mind, it's like just going from high school to college. It's just you're just making another life transition. So you should be allowed to do that. Because look, from an educational standpoint, you may go to Alabama for 4 years, and then they've got a stud in the wings waiting, and it may not even be about competing. But what if Alabama doesn't have the grad program you're looking to go into? Then you go to a school that does.
Well,
but then you're So
that was the point of the rule. That was
right,
the point of the rule.
So I understand the grad transfer rule. I guess if I'm going to be honest with myself, I'd prefer it to revert back to the way it was. If it's not a grad student, if it's not that specific situation, although
everybody's manipulating it.
You're going to manipulate. It'll open a can of worms.
Everybody goes, what don't you offer?
Right.
Yeah, what don't you offer that I can go to and
Right,
say that's
right.
my thing?
But I guess I prefer it to revert back to normal. I want you to have your piece, but I mean, I get it that, a kid commits to a school and before they get there, a coach maybe makes a change, gets fired or something. And in today's day and age, they are, committing to a certain coach or like the offense they run, the defense they run, to help them get to the next level or whatever it may be. Okay. But that happened before this rule change too.
Yeah, so now
So,
here becomes the question.
It's like the millennial situation here.
So now we're going to play off each other in this sense, and I think you've made it clear what your stance is. So you'd like it to revert back. So let's play to pay or not to pay. All right, you take the not pay. Is that what you want? We'll play the argument. You can pick.
Well, it's different now. You've switched subjects from the transfer rule.
But to really what it comes down to is, okay, so now we go to the transfer rule, and the reality is, let's take two or three high profile people that just changed teams. You got Jalen Hurts. Most quarterbacks are big high profile. Jalen Hurts. Mm-hmm. You got Fields.
Yep.
Who was another? Was there any other big ones? We'll stick with those two. Those two are easy.
Well, I mean, Kelly went to Missouri.
Yeah.
And then you have then you have Eason went to Washington. We haven't.
Yeah, but he sat. He sat.
He did sit.
He didn't get.
Oh,
he
yeah,
didn't get
right,
the waiver.
right.
He didn't get the waiver.
And then who's slipping my head?
I mean, there were several transfers, but those were your big. And understand, quarterback is always going to be your biggest one because there's only one quarterback on the field. And so therefore those are guys that if you get stuck behind a Trevor Lawrence, you're done. Like, you know what I mean? If you've got a premier quarterback that's going to get his 3 years and go, but you're going to sit behind him, there is no patience in the sport anymore. So now we get into what's going to designate a school versus another school. Like, let's be honest, Jalen Hurts and Fields were not looking for the degree. Now they got waiver transfers now, but I think Hurts got a graduate transfer. I don't think he needed a waiver. I might be wrong about that. But you've got Fields got a transfer, and it was, I think some of the argument was, I don't know enough about the story, but I heard there was a baseball player that got caught on camera making some racial comments, and I don't know whether that was smoke or not. I have to admit, I don't know, but there was believed to be extenuating circumstances for why he left Georgia beyond the fact that he couldn't get past fair or not fair, whether he's the better talent or not, we don't know yet. But that's why he got a waiver. The reality was they waived a whole bunch of people through this year, more so than I've ever seen in the last 2 years they've done it.
Yeah.
So, but the thing now we go to is you got a Jalen Hurts and you got a Fields. Were they looking for a degree from a specific place, or were they looking for the best football opportunity for them?
They were looking for a football opportunity. But are they grad transfers?
I
Fields,
think
we know
Hurts
Fields isn't.
Right. Fields definitely was not. No, he was given a waiver. He was given a waiver to not sit out.
Right.
But
I don't think Hurts is a grad transfer. I think that was 3 years for him, and he went and he's playing his last. I don't think.
Yeah, but most football players are graduating in 3 years. If you look,
they are 3.5.
3.5. Yeah, right. But meaning they can graduate. They can get their undergraduate. They can take the extra classes. They can get it. So then when you got this idea is ultimately the spirit of that grad transfer rule was offering somebody who had graduated and can go and get a different degree and the degree is not available. The spirit of that rule in its face, he did.
Hurts graduated last month and will be eligible this upcoming season.
Yeah,
so he graduated. Fields did not.
Right. So he's earned it, but then there's that other pushes, like when he sees the writing on the wall and all of a sudden Tua takes over in the national championship game and everybody's like, okay, there's the new hot stud. He's already realizing, like, I'm sitting. So his answer was, I'm going to stay and play at Alabama and I'm going to graduate because I'm going to lose my year, but at least I can play football at Alabama and get, I can get a title. I can get coaching and practice, but now I got to look for an opportunity to play. I got to play because I'm not going to play this year behind Tua. I mean, barring an injury, you had to pray for an injury, but so you got his scenario. Then
I don't know
Fields.
if you have to pray for an injury, but okay.
to play.
I don't know that.
Okay, but if you were,
it's another conversation. But I mean, I had conversations with Marlar, who's an Alabama nut, and he at the game before the game even started was like, I think Tua's soft. He's like, I think he's a good player, but when the heat's on. It's called competitive toughness. I think when your back's against the wall, I don't know if he's got that conversation
right.
for a different day.
Right, and the fact of the matter is we don't know what the coaches are talking about, but a clear sign was when he won the big title game and then got put back on the bench. It's telling of where the mindset is for those coaches. So now we get into. Okay, so let's get into the meat of this, and I'll let you take whatever position you want. Let's talk about to pay a player. Do you pay or not pay? And you can pick a side, and I'll pick a side because we got to talk about the ramifications of if that is to develop. And my feeling right now, given the money, I mean, you are about to see wars in the CBA with basketball, baseball, and pro football in the next 3 years. You're going to see absolute wars.
We're going to have lockouts.
We'll see. We'll see.
No,
but I mean,
they anticipate the NFL, I think, in the next couple of years to have a lockout.
And we had one of our first guys, and financially speaking, he did not really, I don't think, win in this. But you saw your first NFL player at running back be willing to sit out an entire season. And that, truthfully, in the pros and probably in turning college would be
Who's
the
that,
only leverage.
Yeah. Oh, wait.
But I don't want to go into the pro, but I'm just saying you're starting to – you're right, but that's another conversation. But my point is you are starting to see athletes that are paid use the leverage, which the leverage is I won't play. So now you're transforming into college. Like, what is the college player's leverage right now with this? And so, therefore, then the question becomes, wait a minute, there's $1 billion. And the truth of the matter is I don't watch the guys like Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence go out and play because the NCAA drew me in. It's because they drew me in. They're talented. They're the guys on the field. Now, granted, with schools, you have alumni and you have that relationship, with those teams, like, because, hey, that's part of my program. But nonetheless, it's the athlete on the field. So now you're going to go and say there's $1 billion floating around there right now in the NCAA, and that's just the NCAA. That's revenue of an organization that's getting paid into and negotiating the TV contracts. And the guys that are delivering the dollars never see the money. And the question, you can argue. There's a lot of arguments to both sides. So, how do you what argument would you like to take?
Well, I mean, the athletes get stipends right now. So, I mean, like, you know, I know what it's like to be in college and not have a lot of money. Okay, college student. All right. Now, I don't come from. I come from the middle class. So, you know, my parents were there to help me. I had financial aid, but if push came to shove, and then I got a job and I earned my own money, they don't have time to do that.
Right.
Okay. Ideally, they should be spending most of their, you know, free time or any time outside of class on their sport, because they're getting, essentially they are getting paid to go to school. And in today's day and age, and me having 3 girls, you know, in state, out of state, it doesn't matter. It's expensive.
Right.
So that's really, I mean, could you imagine just having the money that you spent on school in your pocket now?
Right.
That said, you know, I mean, if you could, you know, I'm not as familiar with what the stipends are. You know, what I see here says it varies by school, ranging from $2,000 to $5,000 extra going to each full scholarship athlete. I don't know what the details of that are, how that breaks down, but you know, if you could give them a little more under the quote unquote stipend, like I just feel like saying pay players, like we're paying the players now, then it does become more like the NFL, more and more and more. I love the fact that the college game is really starting to bleed into the NFL nowadays. It's fun. I do like it. I think there's some, you know, the old school NFL football that still needs to come out here and again that we forget about because we're always just trying to keep up with the Joneses and the new thing and the speed. But years and years have gone by where people may have said, you know, the pro game's become more like college. Well, no, it hasn't. But in the past, like 3-4 years or 2-3 years, yes,
It's been an offensive revolution.
It has.
that
I
has
mean, from
incorporated.
the player to from the offenses to the players to the coaches. So, but you know, I mean, we love the college game because these guys are playing for their team, because they're not like that's the difference. The NFL is much more individualized, as any pro sports are, because it's a business and they're each getting paid and not all the same. But in college, you're playing for your team, your coaches, you know, the guy next to you, and you know, you start to get into this. I mean, if it gets to a point where it's not evenly distributed, you can't. I don't see how you can have a situation like in NFL where Saquon Barkley gets all the money he gets, and the guy that's blocking for him doesn't. But that's a business. That's, you know, it's like, you know, when I went back to work for big corporate America, I knew what I was entering into, right?
Right.
But from a college level, like, I can't see how you can have that and it go on. I think it'll just completely break apart teams, the sport. You can't have one guy. If it was a percentage rather than a flat rate for everybody, you can't have one guy, you know, some incoming freshman up against a 4th year, you know, starter, senior, like just because he's like the hot shit. I think it'll completely crush the sport. So I guess my answer is like, if you can give them a little more to the current stipend they have and call it a stipend, like I'm not talking about like, oh, well, this player generated so much. It's got to be something even across the board. I mean, like I try to view it from both sides because, you know, I know what it's like to, you know, not have money in college, but at least I could go get a job and earn it. They can't.
So the question, though, then becomes, like you just said, there is a variance right now, and depending upon the university and what people get paid, and we're not talking huge sums of money. So that's, you know, but if you start to change that, what does it become? And then here's the challenge for all of it is,
Well, what is your take on it?
how do you, okay, well, here it is. How do you justify making billions of dollars on the backs of individuals that don't get to see any of it? How
Again,
Okay, well, let me give you this. Let me talk about it
it's
as an
not
average.
cheap to go to college, especially some of these
It's
big
not.
schools. So there's one and two. I mean, like these guys, if they're good enough, they're gonna get back tenfold what they missed out on the 3.5, 4 years they did in college. Most of us that go through that have to pay for college aren't going to come out and make that kind of money your first decade, let alone your entire life. Like, I mean, they're the kings of the campus, and they should, and we love them for it. But like, at what point does it become greed? Like, it doesn't need to be that. These are college, these are kids. They're going through school. Like, what's going to happen next? High school football is becoming big. Are they going to start paying the 5-star athletes on every high school
No,
team?
but you bring up game day, and you said, when's it not about greed? Well, what, if anything else, are these universities doing? Okay, so let's talk about all this money that's made off of here. Look at tuition for the average student, what it's done over the last 20 years. It's obscene. It's triple. Sometimes more.
Yep.
And so I look at it and go, okay, if it's not for greed, how are you making all this money, yet the cost of a university for the average student has gone up so much? So I go back to, how do you, it sounds rather hypocritical to say, we want our piece. We're gonna sell the hell out of this. We're gonna make all this money, and all these power brokers are gonna have all this money. And I'm talking about from the ESPNs to the NCAAs, which the NCAA is one of the most crooked things I've seen. Look at the college basketball. It's out of control. I mean, I'll give you a stat. This is an old stat, but it was when the APR first started coming out. I think it was when they created the whole APR scoring. They went back to Jim Boeheim, coaching at Syracuse. He hadn't had a player graduate in his program at the time, and I could go back and research it, but he hadn't had somebody graduate in 14 years. Mm-hmm. Not one player graduate, get a degree in 14 years. So you're telling me there's not a greed associated with this, because not everybody, the guys at the end of the bench are finishing their career. I mean, should be, right? Or they're running out of eligibility and just not going to class. So I look at it and go, we're acting like we shouldn't look at it as a business, but that's all everybody. Okay, perfect example. How many times do you see a tweet from a recruit, when they go and pick somewhere and said, I'm making a business decision and respect my decision? Like, that's like the famous tagline now on Twitter, is for them to say it. So they're making business decisions. You got players that grew up following a program like Florida, and then they go to Miami, and they're like, it's a business decision. So my idea is, we're kind of pretending that all this isn't already existing in this, and then we're expecting, a different way for them to look at it than what you or I would do. It just, to me, that's where it's at. So then now, this is going to be where the dirty word starts.
What's your answer?
I think you are going. I don't think whether I agree or disagree doesn't really matter. I think you are going to be paying players, whether you call it an increased stipend. But here's the whole thing: is you're going to get this 4-letter F word that is the worst word in this world right now, and it's fair. Pay taxes. Rich people, pay your fair share, because it's the most indescript word, and it's the word that creates the most fighting. What's fair? And so that's where it's going to lie. Like, once you start elevating this, like, even if you get $15,000 or $20,000, the answer is still going to be, as a percent of what I'm trying to make, what I'm making for the university, I'm getting peanuts. So what you're going to do is you're just going to keep reissuing the argument over and over and over and over again. And I look at it like a CBA. It's gotten so ridiculous. Now, I understand there's racial overtones to this, but they're not going to call their owners anymore. They're going to call them governors, because ownership has this bad connotation. But the fact of the matter is, they own a business. They run a business. They make money. You know what? And any business that doesn't use their employees to their advantage is not a business that stays in business very long. So there'll always be, in a capitalist concept here, people trying to make money, there's going to be that issue. So my point is, once you start doing that, I guess you're going to acknowledge the fact that you have not been completely equitable with the players. And then so as soon as you hand them something, you're not going to just subside them and have them just go, oh, you know what, thank you. You're my, so my point is you're going to have that battle of fairness. Now, whether you do it or not, I agree with you. I think the arguments on both sides are very, very difficult because I do want the traditionalists. Like, you will remove amateur out of the athlete part of it. You're going to have kids where then what do you start saying? Like, they're going to have to get certain grades and all that still? Are you going to fight that and then go, okay, so now that I got to fight that, like, look at how much they try to put these players and get them eligible. Just to get him eligible. I just got to get him through the Deion Sanders rule. Remember the Deion Sanders rule? Mm-hmm. All because screw it. I don't have to take my finals as long as, because then they made it so you had to pass your finals and take all your finals before the end of the semester because guys just started bailing. So my point is greed is there. It's there. It exists. It exists right now. The question is, do the players have the ability to come together? And we're probably talking about a union. But do they have the ability to come together to put enough muscle to fight the NCAA, which is a juggernaut? Like, that's going to be no easy feat. You could see it, the O'Banion case in basketball and all that about the likeness. I mean, look, we don't have NCAA football anymore. Why? Because the players went and fought it.
I understand that, but listen, if you do, if it goes down that path, it's not just going to be I think when you get to that point, it won't be just the players. I think it'll be the universities as a whole. If it gets to the point where it's like this is going to happen no matter what, I think the universities will want to sever their relationship with the NCAA. So anything that they have to owe on an annual basis is like,
they don't want to pay into it.
Yeah, I'm not going to pay into it because I already have to pay my people. So let me just save every penny I can to take care of what I have to do here for the university.
Right. Which now we start talking about ramifications. So let's just say we get down this road where they pay players. Okay. So how does that impact you? Like, number one, obviously, how does the revenue sharing work? If the NCAA falls apart now, is there revenue sharing?
Between conferences?
Probably not. Why is the SEC going to give up all their money? Why do you think they created these networks?
Well, wait a minute. Maybe not between I'm sorry. Within the conference.
Yeah.
Again, yeah, within a conference. Because even a conference like ours, like the ACC, like though Clemson may hold up its end of the bargain on the football side, North Carolina will hold up its end of the bargain on the basketball side. So it could even itself out.
It could. But at the same time, then now I go to Title IX. You start paying those. Does it become like it's not fair because you don't pay revenue generating sports? Then are you being biased against women? And do you have to start paying them?
Well, yeah, I mean, like if this thing goes, that's why I said if the university, it's not going to just be the players, like, and specifically the football players. If it's going to happen, I think it's going to happen as a whole. They're going to have to pay every player at the university, every sport. Then it goes back to my original question: does everybody get paid evenly, or is it a percentage? Because then that four-letter word you brought up takes on a whole different meaning within your own home. What's fair and what's not,
and think about just the men versus the women,
and how can that impact those sports at those schools and as a college sport as a whole moving forward? And if it's in a negative way, then what happens at the lower levels, like high school and even before that, where my kids are? I mean, good or not, sports keeps kids busy.
Yep.
Out of trouble, learning what it's like to be a part of the team, discipline. I mean, like you don't have that, then it's bad enough with the being a social network society. People don't even look up from their phones anymore. That's why things like sports can pull them away.
Yeah,
it is you can go down a rabbit hole with this thing, like you said, the ramifications. I mean, it could be bad. It could be bad because you said it. Because if it's on a percentage basis, then not just within the universities, but as a society, then you could have problems with this. With the sexism between the sports.
Yeah, and part of it is, if I was to guess how it's going to begin itself, I would say it would be allowing players to sell their likenesses. Because if you did that,
So college players are getting agents.
well,
You get a business manager. They get you an agent.
oh,
Because
yeah,
that's how you're going to be able, if you're going to be really selling your likeness, that's the person that's going to pull in a PR person, get your name out there, and start. It becomes a whole new stream of jobs, quite frankly.
yeah. The truth is the control that has to be put on this, and I don't think they could. It's a floodgate sort of thing. Once they open this, is when it's going to get serious. And so the question becomes: do you do it? Do you do it as a stipend? Is there a revenue? Is there is it shared revenue? Like right now, I think what is the NFL? It's like 48 and 52% players to owners kind of thing. So you're okay. Now you're talking about large money. Then you talk about the fairness of the sports. You talk about what it's going to do to programs that can't generate.
Yeah, smaller schools could end up in deep shit trouble.
And then I go look at what happens to the kids that go to the school that aren't athletes. What does tuition look like then?
Yeah, because especially at schools where you may not, if it's laid down across the board the same for everybody, then schools, like I said, little with smaller teams, those smaller schools are not so good. Like that's trouble because you got to pay regardless of whether it's successful or not.
So
you want to have those programs to offer kids at your school so that you're an appealing university for those that can't be like maybe at the best at the Alabamas, but if in turn the other students' tuition goes up that are not athletes in order to pay those kids, well, how does a university survive?
Yep.
Especially a private institution at that. Even all institutions that and I haven't really, I'll be honest, heard a whole lot of talk. How does this affect the way in particular football teams right now are earning the majority of their money? We talked about it before. Boosters.
Yep.
How does that come into play? Then they're going to be like, well, are they going to have to pay more? Are they going to have their own say? I don't want to pay that much. They're generating it just from eyeballs. What do I, Or then what happens? Then what happens to university like funding? Like when they go out, people go out and, your annual, hey, be part of IPTE, or hey, give back to your university. Then what does that look like?
Yeah.
It's like, we need a lot of money for those that are struggling. Others that make a lot, it's like, well, we still want more of your money even though we're making a lot. Then it's like, hey, I love my university. Don't put a bad taste in my mouth.
Yeah.
It's like, what the? It's a very slippery slope. The whole thing,
I think
which is why I'm kind of like, maybe we should let's kind of keep it like it is.
Well, I think that's what it ultimately comes down to is really when it's all said and done, it all comes down to, is it a product that the fans who are paying all the money could enjoy? And so what does it look like? Because like you said, you've got to keep the fans. Sports has changed. The landscape and the viewership has changed.
Mm-hmm.
The younger generations are not watching sports like our generation did.
No, they're watching esports.
Yeah, and
but you can with technology, you don't need to be there. You don't need to be there anymore. You can. It's almost sometimes, quite frankly, less of a hassle. And don't get me wrong. You know how much I love going to games. Mm-hmm. It's not far. It's only an hour and a half, 2 hours from where we are. But when you have a family and you got nice big TV and
air conditioning,
yeah, you can pause. Yep. You can get crazy and run around, with your boys and chest bump one of them to the floor because you've lost your mind and you're twice his size. Mm-hmm. It makes it a decision.
Yep.
Yeah,
and I think it's. I will say this: if I have to take a position and be a little bit of a prognosticator, it's going to happen. I think it's going to redefine the landscape in a way that I don't even know that we can, because of all these questions have come up. It's going to happen over time, just kind of how the playoff evolved. We were talking about playoffs in the 90s.
Yeah.
When that started happening, because it was like, well, wait a minute, why do we have these split national championships? Why do we have all this?
BCS started getting bad.
Right,
heat,
right.
and, you know,
Right, 'cause they were
immediately
missing.
is what's an alternative.
Yep, because it was, and a simple point is, some of the playoff games have been kind of, weak, and so it's the question is, if you only have one game, then it was, oh well, then now this one game's weak, and so I think the point that comes down to it is there's a lot of revenue, and I think if the NCAA and the schools don't come to the table with something, I just think in all reality the players are going to start pushing another way. The other way that they could push could be as simple as I want to be like basketball. I want the one and done. Now the challenge with football will always be the physical development of the body. Can't get away with it. I mean, you look at the average, tackle in college football versus the average tackle in the pros, it's a different size man. And remember something, a very small percentage of athletes, even if we just looked at football in and of itself, actually go pro. I mean, it's such a small percentage.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, you're talking about how great the Alabama teams are, and what do they got, like 50 guys in the pros?
Yeah.
And that's premier.
Yeah, I mean, it's it's about developing, men before football players because and that's really why. This is I mean, I'm all for being optimistic, and when you're in the situation you're in playing D1 college football, man, you've made something of yourself.
Yep.
Okay, and especially if you love it and love the sport, and that's your thing is football. But this is as it was from high school to college is it's that pool shrinks.
Yep.
The number of slots available shrinks tremendously.
Yep.
So, it's about developing, men or young people first, so that if you're not one of those few that gets it, then you have an opportunity. That's why it's so important, I think, that it's a shining star on programs and coaches that are able to graduate their kids. I mean, and I think and we've done it well, and I'm not, I will toot Clemson's horn, but you know what? That also, you talk about all the things that lead into how good we've been doing over the years and recruiting. That's part of it too.
Yep.
Kid knows they can come and have an opportunity potentially if they're that good to be in the NFL draft after 3 years of school and have their degree. That's appealing.
Yeah, and we have to be careful not to pretend and deal with the reality of players in the top 25 schools are getting paid. I'm not saying everyone is, but players are getting paid. And here's the thing I have with that. That's the real problem is players that are getting paid.
Players that are getting played?
Yeah, they're getting paid. The risk is all on the individual. You got adults with money. The risk is all on them.
Right.
They suffer if that comes to light, they're the only ones that suffer. Sometimes you got guys doing dirty money, and so they come back and there's a criminal investigation.
Yeah, but if the coaches weren't aware of it, then they suffer if it's found out. The team suffers.
And I go back to how
bowl bans as a result of some dumbass.
Well, I think we make the rules are so predicated off of keeping a balance that it really loses the idea of the student athlete right now. And I think that's part of the reason why the payment's going to come up. I think it's already happened. It's already started. And I look at it. I mean, God, look at the substance stuff. You got guys getting banned for it. I mean, I've heard how big this book is of all the banned substances. In the NFL, you're responsible for what's put in your body. But these college kids, I mean, you're expecting an 18-year-old kid to come in and know, well, this supplement I can't take. And we're not talking about roids. We're talking about an ingredient that doesn't even make it on the bottle.
Yeah, something you can buy at GNC.
My point is, right. So the point is all these kids get, they have all the risk. And I think that's what goes down to the financial aspect. They have all the risk. And the question becomes, is their reward really worth it? And for those that get their big contracts in the NFL and get drafted, yeah, sure it is. But that's such a small portion. And those kids, because it is a team sport, do not develop the revenue on their own. Like you said, the left tackle in college for a great quarterback is an incredibly important person. It's obviously important in the NFL. It's one of the highest paid line positions there is, the left tackle, if not the highest. But the idea being would that guy be the shining star that's going to get the big chunk of change the way it's going? Maybe, maybe not. Maybe, maybe not.
Yeah, I mean, I think again, you may be right. We may be headed for this. The way society's changed certainly wouldn't be something that if it happened, I'd be like, whoa, or like slapped upside the head. Can I say I like it? What I think is that, just from a personal perspective, and I know there's plenty of people out that bleh. See, now you got me speaking messed up. There are plenty of people out there that are eager and want to take on all these different questions, aspects, tasks, facets, what have yous, that are going to come up, because it seems like you're opening a can of worms that's, like I said, it could be just unending, and I understand even slowly building into it, but at the same time, it's just like, that seems so overwhelming. Why would you even want to bother? It's like, what the hell? I mean,
Well,
like,
if you're the 18-year-old on the team that's generating the money, or the 19-year-old, they're going to want to bother. I guess the question is,
are they smart enough to? I mean, I don't know if that's really what's on their plate. If they're heavily involved in the program and doing what they're supposed to, then I don't know that you have a whole lot of time to devote to, the legalities and here's the reason why. Let me make a valid list of reasons why we're going to do it.
But you could get a bunch of agents together that which are all lawyers, and they could come and they can make the case for you. So my point is,
that's what I said before. There's
they don't
plenty
even
of
have to
people
do
out
it.
there that are eager to.
Right. And so then the issue becomes, and think about it. There are plenty of athletes that made tons of money for the university that never saw a dime in pro football. Tons of money, whether it be through injury or whatever else, or just wasn't quite good enough to make it in the league. And I look at it and go, it's the mentality of people today. And I will say this, like, college athletes, just like high school athletes, emulate the levels above them. Like, do you ever remember? I mean, I remember playing Little League, and I remember my dad yelled at me one time when he was throwing to me, because I once saw Ricky Henderson hit a baseball and he like put his heel up in the air, like put his toe up in the air when he hit, and you lose all your power. But I saw Ricky Henderson do it, so I kind of started trying to emulate him. Okay, so that's a real kind of corny. And he was like, "What are you doing? That's just stupid. Stop trying to be something you're not." But I think about it. Okay, so let's go back to this, like Le'Veon Bell, like the leverage is to sit out. And to give me an opportunity. So now, how have I seen something like that transform to college sports? Bowl games.
Yeah, there's
guys won't play
already.
bowl games. Nick Bosa? Was he the one
He
that
sat
got
out the whole season?
Yeah, he got a little tweaked ankle, and he was like, "Screw it," or tweaked knee.
because he didn't want to risk.
Yeah, he's like,
hurting
"I'm not
himself.
risking. I'm going to be a
to
top
his
5
credit,
pick."
I mean, there have been guys that have hurt themselves and they're
Right.
lost a lot of money as a result. That's why these kids are taking out insurance policies.
Right. And so my point is, they're the ones in control of this in a sense. I mean, certainly the NCAA is mostly in control, but to the point is the game better because we don't get to see our guys play in our bowl games? Is it for the fan? Is that a better thing? Like when Derwin James sat out for Florida State, we sucked, but if he's,
No.
granted, we weren't going to a bowl game. That was a bad example.
No, because we've changed the landscape of college football with the playoffs. So no, unfortunately, though it still generates money, if it's not one of the 4 teams, no. Let him sit out. You should want your guy to sit out and go get his, because you're playing for, the Outback Steaks Bowl. I mean, no.
Right.
They should sit out. Now, you haven't seen that happen yet in the college with the teams involved in the college football playoff. I don't think you will. I think it doesn't matter. I mean, like, if you're seriously hurt, all right. Or if for some reason, like Texas last year got suspended on the BS, then it is what it is. But if you're in one of those 4 teams, you won't sit out. I don't see that happening.
Okay, but that's my
You've
point.
put in so much work. I don't see that happening. And not just 1 year. If you're going into the NFL, that means you've been there at least 3. No, I don't see that happening. I don't see it, and I don't see it being a problem.
But is that good for? Okay, so now is that good for college football? Given that you're still seeing the same 10 to 12 teams having a shot at the BCS, the playoff, at the end of the year, and so the question then becomes, I mean, you've got a bowl system. Your bowl system was designed about getting everybody out there, everybody on TV. It's a revenue generating, and now you've got people that won't even go to bowl games. They won't travel anymore because of the reasons you said before. Players not playing. So what I guess I'm just trying to bring to the
No,
point
I don't
that
think
everything's
people won't
starting
go
to
to
change.
a bowl game because a player isn't because Nick Bosa decided to sit out in college, dude.
Well, not if he's no, well, not maybe not. Nick Bosa's
They're not
scenario.
going to go. It doesn't matter if Deshaun was sat out and we were in the Gator Bowl, or we were, if we played here in town in the Peach Bowl and Deshaun wasn't playing, I'd go watch. It's not about him. Like it doesn't. I wouldn't be mad that he wasn't there either because I understand the situation. I'm a grown adult, but you won't. It'd be different if it were one of the playoff games, and I just don't see that happening.
No, I
And I don't
agree
think
this
I
playoffs
think
would be a
that the
different story.
playoffs have created it, not the players sitting out. If
No.
the value of the sport in bowl season has been diminished a bit, which I believe it has. Now, where it has there, I do believe that the playoffs have lifted it beyond where the BCS was, even though there were more games. I just think it's more interesting. Even though the semi games might not be, I do believe, and not just because I'm a fan, you've had the best teams in, best matchups, and that's what it's all about at the end of the day and at the end of the season. But that, in terms of the bowl season, like outside of the playoffs, all those bowls being diminished, that's due to the college football playoff, not the players sitting out.
Right. Well, I think it's happening. I think we're seeing the seeds of it. I don't think we're seeing the tidal wave coming.
Sowing the seeds of love.
You're making me cry there. Tears for
Sowing in the
Fears.
seeds.
But that's it. I think I guess my point is I see the seeds of it. I don't necessarily see this change right away. And I do. I personally, I'm a traditionalist by nature in most things. So I like this idea. I want to believe that the players are coming there to play for the university and that's their thing. But the truth is we've seen enough examples where that's not it. It's just like the coaching changes. So, when players want to leave for coaching, I guess the question becomes, what does it look like? And in my mind, that's what I race through is what does it look like if it does shift? And is it something I still like? And that's
Well, I
what's going to
hope
be
so.
very interesting. I
Because
agree.
this is a great conversation, but I guess that's yet to be seen. Like you said, it took a while to go from BCS to the college football playoff, but I do feel like we're in a better place. I think the majority of the college football fans would feel the same way, even though their team may not have gotten in there. And again, then the bowl season becomes diminished. The regular season is so important, so that 3 months that you're chomping at the bit every Saturday, is worth it, whether you make it or not at the end, right? I mean, it's so great and has you so passionate regardless. So, say that to say, then we went from the BCS to the college, it's a positive. So maybe it will be a positive. It doesn't, by the way we're talking, we're old school, I guess, but we don't want to see it go that way. We don't want it to not be something we enjoy, like you said. And so change can be hard. You worry that, with that change, you're going to change or your feelings, your attitude, your passion's going to change. I hope not. It's, for guys like us, we love it.
Yep.
We don't have many hobbies, but this is it. And, so I hope it doesn't. But if it does, then, I don't want to immediately poo-poo it. Hopefully, then you just got to hope for the best, I guess.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I just with the battles we have seen more recently with all major sports in the pros over these CBAs and the money, because the money's gotten so big. It turns me off. The NFL's deal turned me off. Now I like my team. I watch my team, but it does turn me off. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's like getting on some of these websites. Like when somebody just talk about sports, I don't need to know, that somebody got into a tussle with a security guard at, a McDonald's whatever the hell it is. Just
Yeah, I
stupid
mean,
stories.
like I'm tired
But
of
that's
hearing
most
about
of
these,
sports.
like domestic disputes. It turns my stomach. It isn't right. They shouldn't do. But I mean, again, that goes back to where I started with the game day and its impact. Media will make you see what you want to see.
Right.
And I think as a result, also in the society we're in the social society, and the media twisting things the way they want it, I think athletes don't know what to do sometimes, especially the ones that aren't as smart.
Yep.
They just try to might take the high road and put themselves in a situation where they're guilty or they're not. They don't know what to do, because at the end of the day, whatever the media wants us to see out of the situation is probably what we're going to see.
Right.
So, it goes back to, we love Last Chance U, but, and that guy, despite he's probably, he is very rough around the edges, Coach Brown, but we're seeing the worst of him.
Oh,
there,
yeah.
because the stuff where he might be a nice guy or something just wouldn't jive. People want to see the train wreck.
Wouldn't pull people in.
That's right. Okay, cool. All right. Well, that was good conversation. Let's pause there, and if we do another one, we'll be back up here in a minute.